Hello there, guys. Welcome back to another episode of E&Ftv. Today we're joined by the brilliant Lukas Peter, who is Head of Revenue at Soho House Co. Lukas, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
It's a real pleasure to get you on the show. Obviously, we've been talking for a few months now, and it's something that I've been very much looking forward to. So, Lukas, on these episodes, we always try and get to know the guest a little bit more before we get into the questions. So, just to understand a bit about your background, your experience, I suppose what brought you to revenue management, and of course the role that you're in now. So, yeah, please do tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure, thank you. Well, I started very early working in hotels in Zurich in a five-star hotel, and I was always very fascinated in how a hotel works, how you make that commercially successful, and I kind of knew that is the direction I want to go to. And after a few years of working, I went to Lausanne and studied international hospitality management, and from there I really wanted to go into the commercial side of running hotels, and revenue, of course, is a good stepping stone, because in the end, revenue combines everything. It's operationally relevant. It is sales. It is marketing. It is e-commerce. It is communications, and so on and so on. Mm. So after a few internships, I ended up in London and worked for a nationally hotel management company in their headquarters, in the revenue and commercial team. And from there, I had a really good impact, like insights into how to run a collection of hotels successfully.
Yeah. And
that was really the stepping stone. So I got then approached by Soho House to build up and lead their revenue team globally as well. So they had no revenue management for their hotel rooms before.
Yeah.
And of course, they couldn't say no to that. A great opportunity, great company, very dynamic, very entrepreneurial, trying new things. So yeah, now I'm looking after our 20 hotels with my 13 plus minus teams, and that's I guess how I ended up in that position where I am today.
Fantastic. Now, of course, today's market. You say obviously where I am today. Today's market is very different to how it was probably about 8 or 9 months ago. But we find ourselves in it nonetheless. Now, of course, there is a lot of sort of scope, I suppose, in terms of where the market is right now, and obviously how we're going to try and get through it. Let's be honest, there's been a lot of doom and gloom out there. There's been a lot of talk about the negative aspects of this. But what we do see in the industry is people do come together in times of crisis. And in my opinion, and I hope that you would agree with this, we don't actually see that more than when we see it actually on property. When you see the teams coming together, when you hear about the stories of them really supporting each other and sort of coming together in this, as I say, this time of crisis. So what are your thoughts in terms of that camaraderie piece on property, and of course in the teams that you've got?
It was actually a really interesting experience, I have to say. We saw the whole COVID thing coming quite early. I remember, when we received a lot of cancellations in Mumbai and Istanbul early, mid-December. So we saw, something is coming. And then it was really like a wave, just taking over the whole world. And initially it was quite frustrating and shocking, and it left you in this weird state, because everyone, whatever they worked for the next few months, was just gone. It was just vanished, right? And in the beginning, it was very rough, because all the teams, they didn't know what to do, and nor did my team here in London knew what to do, right? So it was a phase of really connecting professionally, but also emotionally, because everyone had the same fears, guys. You see the business that you're losing and the money, and all of a sudden your job is at risk, and so on and so on. So from that perspective, it was great, and to see how people came together. What I found really interesting to see is that all of a sudden, all my teams around the world started to join, for example, each other's commercial calls because they wanted to know, hey, how is Berlin doing? How is Amsterdam doing? Oh, New York, how is it going there? What are they doing to mitigate the risk? And it was very, very good to see that all of a sudden the revenue team started working much more closer together on a global scale. But once the sites started to reopen, the lockdowns were over and so on, it was fascinating to see how the teams internally started to work together. So all of a sudden, you have the reservation manager working closely with the housekeeping managers and even closer with the front of house manager, because they all need to now understand where the business is coming from and how to make it work, right? Like if you have almost no room sold for tomorrow, and within a day you pick up half your inventory, well, the housekeeping manager needs to know. And I think it was really, really fascinating to see how all of them started working together and come together and support each other in those times.
No, this is it. And as I say, hospitality is that people, it's the people within it that make it what it is. And I know from working on property myself, when, not in a pandemic, but when we had incredibly busy days, it was very much a case of hands on deck. Whereas now it's very much just a case of everybody's in this together. You're not alone, although days do go by where you do feel that way. But at the end of the day, as I say, on property, and of course in larger corporate offices as well, I'm not taking it away from them, but we do know that our on-property people are the sort of backbone, if you like, of our hospitality industry. They just are.
Absolutely.
So no, that's, again, it's just that sort of slightly more positive piece in this sort of world of negativity that we see ourselves in at the moment. I suppose moving now from a sort of a lesser general sort of question, more to a specific one to your teams. In terms of revenue management, from your perspective, from your experience, and from what you're seeing in the market right now, what's your opinion on where revenue management is heading, where it is at the moment and how we're coping, but I suppose where it's heading to?
Yeah, just one thing to add to the previous question. I think what came very obvious is that, and what you said before is absolutely right, that the teams, they need to also understand what our teams are doing. So cross-training is or has become instrumental now to survive. Like if the revenue manager doesn't know exactly what the front desk is doing, you're lost. Vice versa. The GM needs to be involved. Like everyone needs to be 100% involved and know what the other teams are doing. So I think leading from that to the next question, how will the role change, or how has it changed already? Before it was, monitoring the system, reporting, and really optimizing that last bit of revenue. How much can you sell that last room at to optimize whatever, and mainly listening to a system doing the job for you. And I think now the human aspect has come back into play again, because it's about the relationships you have within your hotel or within your house. Again, cross-training, right? You need to have a seamless communication stream with your front of house team, with the housekeeping team, and so on, in order to be successful as revenue manager. And forecasting now, every revenue manager was so proud of their forecasting skills, right? Now, I mean, do you even bother forecasting? Yeah, it's okay to get a range, we're probably going to end up there, but you saw in the UK 2 weeks ago, from one day to the other, all gone. So I think the key element that I take away here is that the human has moved back into the picture, and you need to really know what you're doing now, almost micromanaging your hotel again, and understand what other teams are doing.
It's interesting because I've had the exact same conversation with so many other commercial leaders in our industry. I've been creating and sort of delivering soft skills workshops, because that's been something that revenue managers have notoriously not been great at. Let's put it like that. It's usually been the sales and the creatives in the marketing side that have always had that communication element. Whereas stakeholder management now, as you say, the human is back within revenue management. It just is. It's a necessity. It's a need. It's just is. And I think that's something that's becoming more and more apparent the more time that goes on.
And you know as well, those silos that we keep working on I mean a lot of big, or let's say a bit more hotel corporations, they moved with the time and they broke down the silos, right? But a lot of dinosaurs in the industry, they really work in those silos. You know, marketing does marketing, sales does sales, revenue management does revenue management, blah blah blah, and so on. That doesn't work anymore. Like, there's no way those companies or those hotels will survive. Everyone needs to understand what everyone else is doing, and they must work together. The times of silos is really over, and I think also the focus has shifted from, you know, rooms revenue management only to total revenue management. It was always the case that, you know, it was always a thing like, yeah, we want to focus on total revenue now, but now you have to, like, your flow through is what pays your bills in the end and generates the cash flow in order to survive. And you know, saying that though, the human aspect is back, yes, but now seeing how the industry has evolved and, you know, how systems have become more different, I think one important change is that the revenue manager of the future really understands how artificial intelligence works, how machine learning works. All those, they don't need to be an expert, but they need to understand, because now the times really are over that you can base everything on historic data. Yeah. So, you know, it's also, I think the scope has widened a little bit, shifted a little bit. But yeah, technology is also a key aspect that now has come into play and will be important in the future for revenue managers for sure. Besides, of course, as you said, relationships and, you know, silos and so on and so on.
I was going to say, the big problem that I've always got is, you know, a lot of us have been saying this for a little while, but the hospitality industry notoriously has a tendency to drag its heels with change. A lot of industries, don't get me wrong, but we're obviously in this one. And I've found that this change that has to come as a necessity, we do, in my opinion, we need more people in our industry promoting that and being an ambassador to drive that change. Yeah. Because at the moment, it just feels that it's not happening fast enough, even in a time like this.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting point. I have a lot of friends, of course, working in, you know, in large corporations, national corporations, and, you know, for them to make a change, especially with COVID, you know, the whole demographics change within hours, within days, until the time they adapt, the situation has completely changed again. Right. So, as you said, like, the change is crucial now, becoming more lean, coming faster. And, you know, if something doesn't work in the morning, you need to change it in the afternoon. Tomorrow it's done, right? You need to make it happen now. You cannot go through hundreds of approval processes to the board and I don't know what, because by then you missed the boat.
Yeah, this is it. And this is interesting, because this is where the smaller hospitality groups, the hotel management companies, your service department groups, staycation group, all these guys that aren't these huge corporates have been able to be agile during this period of time. They've been able to be proactive rather than reactive. And they've been the ones to actually drive the change that the industry is sort of seeing from a wider perspective, I suppose.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Before, processes were always led by the larger corporates. They're the ones that sort of dictated how the industry worked, and everything else just sort of followed suit, you know, a few years behind. And it's interesting that dynamic change, you know, it's now these smaller groups that are saying, you guys are doing it all wrong. You need to be doing this. This is what we're doing, and it's getting us through it. That combined, you know, the human element combined with sophisticated tech that not necessarily is running on these legacy platforms, but these newer age, new kids on the block that are providing great tech. I just think it's the time for change, isn't it, really? This disruption, as much as it's come with its negative impact, don't get me wrong, but it's certainly come with its positive change.
100%. And now it's the time. It's easier, first of all, to do it now, because there's there's the time now. Because yeah, I mean, now in London, I mean, what is there to do, right? Yeah. So it's actually, it is a very, very sad and dark time for our industry, but, realistically speaking, in a few years, we will be back to whatever is normal then, right? And now we should really use that time to make those changes in order to be successful and be back on, where we should really be.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
I suppose, sort of finally, I guess, coming to you guys, specifically, I mean, what's been happening with you guys? What's been happening with Soho House Co?
I mean, we actually had quite a good time now because we have a strong membership base. So our hotels and our clubs were quite busy. And if I look at industry numbers, I mean, we're doing much better than them, which is great. Very great to see. Besides that, we're also launching a new membership tier. And we actually going ahead with all our openings next year. That kept us busy now to plan that and make that a success. So yeah, it's been very, very busy, I have to say. Surprisingly, much busier than I thought. And yeah, I mean, the good thing is really that we're going ahead with all our openings next year. So there's plenty of work, plenty of jobs, I guess, at one point at least. Yeah, so it's been a good time actually.
Do you think that's got something to do with the fact that, at the end of the day, although it is a similar product to straight hotels, the fact that you've got this sort of, it is a members club sort of part of the business, I guess. Do you think that's had a contributing factor to the success that you've had?
100%. I mean, for us, we're not a hotel company in the end. And the hotel is in addition to our offering, to our service offering. And that definitely helped because you have a very loyal customer base. We know our guests, and we are actually able to customize and personalize our offering, which has proven to be successful, especially now. And you can see that people are loyal. They prefer to stay in smaller hotels. They know that, it's well managed. It's not a 300 bedroom hotel, right? Definitely that has helped, yeah, for sure.
It's got that sort of boutique feel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in a very
with your business mix as well, you've got so many things to offer clients.
Yeah.
Whereas if you are just a hotel business, you're struggling now. It's like in recruitment right now, if you're thinking about it. If you're just in recruitment and you're not diversifying your revenue streams, if we're talking in revenue terms, you're struggling. Whereas
absolutely,
if you're looking at different ways of bringing in that revenue and obviously supporting clients at the same time, that's where you're going to succeed. So I guess there's some correlation there, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, most of our houses, they have, from a huge gym to a cinema to various restaurants and bars to rooftop pool to indoor pool. There's a huge offering to it. So it's more a destination rather than just a hotel, in the end. And that really makes a difference. And we can see that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Lukas, I just want to say a huge thank you for taking the time to join us today. As I said, I was very much looking forward to our conversation. Just
likewise.
We sort of catch up sort of on a semi-regular basis, and we're always on the same page on a lot of points, and it's great to obviously get your view and insight onto these, as I say, slightly more positive aspects of what we're seeing. So I want to say a big thank you to you for appearing on the show.
Thank you too. Thanks for having me, Tom. Pleasure.
And guys, don't forget to check out who's on next week's episode now.